Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about cortisol because it is one of the favourite topics for the fearmongers. Fearmongers? I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to go into a deep dive just because there's just so much misinformation. I get quite a lot of questions about it. So let's talk about it. Now, let's start with what it is. It's a really important hormone involved in loads of physiological processes, and honestly, it's not something you need to focus on directly. It can be tested, so you can have a blood test for your serum cortisol, saliva test for your salivary cortisol, hair test, urine test. Each of those has its limitations. Blood tests are impacted by recent stresses, illnesses, medications, so it's like a snapshot. Your saliva test can be impacted by medications and foods and is even less precise than blood tests are. A hair test is more of a long-term look at the cortisol levels rather than current. And the urine test takes a full day of urine samples and it can't measure the timings of your cortisol peaks like throughout the day. Most people do not need to get their cortisol levels tested. I can understand why you might think you do need to. So to help you understand why and to cut through the BS that you've been reading online, I'm going to give you an evidence-based overview of what cortisol is, its interactions, and what you actually should be focusing on. So cortisol is a glucocorticoid hormone, which is produced and released by the adrenal glands. It's a chemical messenger. It affects nearly almost every organ and tissue in the body. So it plays a really crucial role in maintaining your overall well-being, and it's part of the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the HPA axis. I'm smiling because I actually said it all in one, which is the body's central stress response system. So what does it do? It regulates your stress response. So I'm going to take you through like a step-by-step what happens. So the amygdala, which is the emotional processing center in your brain, detects that something could be a threat or that you are under threat. Now, this could be anything from the fact that you're chronically undereating or the fact that there is a lion stood in front of you. It's detecting a threat. It sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus in the brain. The hypothalamus releases CRH, which is corticotropin releasing hormone. CRH triggers the pituitary gland to release ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone. ACTH travels to the adrenal glands, prompts them to release cortisol. So cortisol is now in your bloodstream and increases glucose availability to provide energy. It suppresses non-essential functions, so digestion, growth, reproduction, and immune response. It then enhances the brain's use of glucose and improves tissue repair, so you are prepared to handle this threat that it has now detected. So one thing you might pick up in what I just said is that it suppresses non-essential functions. Now imagine somebody who's highly stressed. So, and I mean highly stressed, like chronically all the time living in this high stress status from work, mental health worries, family struggles, day-to-day, financial. They're constantly perceiving threats. So those functions, those non-essential functions, are paused a lot of the time. So think about digestion. We know that there is a link between IBS and stress. And think about reproduction. If you are under stress in any way, whether mental or physiological, you often will see cycle issues. So you can see that's just two examples there just to demonstrate that process and where those functions are turned off and paused. Yeah, that's not going to matter in those steps that I just talked about, that could happen, in less than a minute. But if you imagine that your body is constantly doing that because you are always at high stress and your body is always thinking that you are stressed or that you are under threat, then you can see where it becomes a problem. So cortisol is not just a response, it's a regulator in the stress cycle. So negative feedback loop. So high cortisol levels signal the hypothalamus and the pituitary to reduce CRH and ACTH to help the body return to baseline once the threat has passed. So it kicks in to say, right, there's a threat, this is what we're going to do. And then it says, okay, no worries, we're okay, and we can go back to our normal levels now. So again, if you're chronically stressed and you're constantly perceiving threats, then this baseline return isn't happening or not happening for long enough. Anti-inflammatory effects. So cortisol controls inflammation by suppressing the immune response. Now, short term, this is protective. It helps to maintain the balance between inflammation and healing. And again, if that's a chronically high stress situation, chronically high stress, then it becomes a problem. Now, we know that stressed people often get ill or take longer to recover from things. You know, imagine if when you've been working for really hard, maybe more than normal, and you've been in a stressed period, you might get a lot of colds, or you might, you catch a cold and everyone around you seems to get over it in a couple of days, but you're taking longer. Like, that's an example of that. Your cognitive focus. So cortisol enhances your memory and alertness short term by sending a signal to the hypothalamus, as I said before, so that you can respond better in a crisis. So to help you make a quick, clear, positive decision, positive's the wrong word, a good decision quickly and clearly in a crisis. It contributes to regulating your blood pressure by influencing blood vessel constriction and dilation. So chronic stress can disrupt this regulation, potentially leading to hyper or hypotension. Again, we quite often hear about people who live these long-term high stress lives. They end up with high blood pressure. That's just, again, another example of where that comes into play. Cortisol is part of regulating the sleep-wake cycle, so your circadian rhythm. So cortisol if the highest levels of cortisol naturally are in the morning, it helps you to wake up. It helps maintain the balance between waking and sleep by influencing the release of other hormones that are involved in this process. So disruptions in your cortisol levels can impact the quality and the timing of your sleep. Cortisol also influences glucose production in the liver, helps mobilize glucose from storage sites such as muscles or fat cells. So it's ensuring a constant energy supply for the body. Again, this will be used in those kind of fight or flight moments when you think you're under threat, and then it will return back to baseline levels where you just have that constant energy supply and it's normal processes. If cortisol stays high, like during chronic stress or poor sleep, then its impact on metabolism control is where you might think that cortisol is what's making you gain weight or be overweight. So when cortisol is triggered, aldosterone increases. During this process, water is retained around the middle, around your belly, and you will probably start to think that's fat, which is understandable. And that may impact your my diet isn't working behaviors. Then you will increase your calories through those behaviors, and then you will actually start to gain body fat. What's actually happening there is water retention. So it's just being stored, and when your cortisol levels drop again in their normal process, then it will all go again, and that's fine and a normal process. What also happens is that cortisol moves body fat storage away from your subcutaneous areas, so like your hips, your thighs, and into your visceral areas, so protecting your organs. Again, it's on protect mode, but it still cannot create fat. You can only gain body fat from a calorie surplus. That is the only way that can happen. Cortisol does not create fat. But as I say, you've got the water retention scenario, you've got the fact that body fat might be stored around your belly, making you think that you have gained weight, but actually it's just that the same body fat is being stored in a different area. But if you are living a high stress lifestyle, the impact on your behaviors is much more important than whether your cortisol level is high or not at any given moment. Again, unless that's a chronic long-term problem. So yes, Cortisol can promote water retention and change where your body fat is stored, but it cannot create body fat. Only you can do that by living in a calorie surplus. And I say living because it's not just like eating a calorie surplus. Obviously, it is what you eat and drink in terms of calories versus your movement levels, your energy expenditure, and your daily bodily BMR. That's the word I'm looking for. So the calories, the energy that is just burned by existing. So you can only gain body fat through a calorie surplus, but yes, cortisol can impact your behaviors that might lead you to then be in a calorie surplus. A consideration for menopause, there is actually one. Again, it's nowhere near as controversial and worrying or impactful as the fearmongers will have you believe. But so estrogen is bone protective. High levels of cortisol can increase the levels of your, no, not the levels, can impact on your bone tissue being broken down. Now, again, that is not a worry day to day. You don't need to think, well, when I wake up, my cortisol level gets higher, therefore my bone tissue is being broken down. That's not how it works it's not an everyday, this is what's happening scenario. But if you are in a chronically stressed state, long-term stress, and you're either perimenopause or gone through menopause and you have lower estrogen and high cortisol at the same time, then the two working together, you can see that there's going to be an imbalance there. So what does this mean is that we need to be strength training. We need to be doing the things we know that are going to help to increase our bone mass and our bone density. This is also why we need to manage our stress during stressful eras, i.e. the menopause. Again, it is not about cortisol is making menopause worse. There are loads of claims that high cortisol levels are what is making your menopause symptoms worse. Now, your stressful life is probably making your menopause symptoms worse. Yes, because of how it impacts your behaviors and your decisions, and because of other physiological things that happen in your body when you are under high stress. But again, focusing on actual cortisol levels and trying to fix them with a supplement, and there are lots of supplements, particularly electrolytes keep coming up, which again, so there's the reason where that probably starts is that if you are sweating a lot due to night sweats and you take electrolytes, then yes, that I can see why that works, absolutely. But that isn't, oh, you have high cortisol levels during perimenopause, so you must take electrolytes. Like, that's not the link there. They just take a tiny bit of data, put it together and say, do you have this, and this problem? I mean, I could say to any woman aged between 35 and 55, and I could say, are you busy? Are you stressed? Are you tired? Do you really need to sit down at the end of the night to find yourself reaching for that glass of wine because you've had a rough day? You need me. I'm the answer to everything. Now, the difference with me is that I probably am the answer to lots of those things, but that supplement isn't. They are just picking symptoms that match pretty much every female aged 35 to 55, and that's easy to do. So, yeah, it's looking a bit deeper. Don't treat a symptom, treat a cause. And the cause of chronically elevated cortisol levels is chronic stress. So what can you do about your stress? So, areas to focus on. What do you need to do? So your diet. You need to be fueling and hydrating yourself well. And I'm going to caveat all of this next bit by telling you there is nothing magic in what I'm about to say. That there genuinely is nothing magic about it. But telling you something that's not magic on Instagram doesn't sell a supplement. And telling you to focus on your lifestyle and improve small parts of your lifestyle day by day isn't controversial, isn't going to go viral, and isn't going to make money for an influencer. Influencers don't care about your health. They don't care whether you actually take their supplement. They just want you to pay for it. That's it. So this bit I'm going to caveat with is not magical, but it is actionable and it is something you can do to improve your stress levels and henceforth stop yourself, or prevent yourself, sorry, from having chronically elevated cortisol levels. So your diet, fuel and hydrate yourself well. General guidelines that I give my clients: 100 grams minimum of protein every day, 25 to 30 grams of fiber every day, enough water to keep your wee at a good colour. There is no, like, my one-to-ones, I'm going to give them a better guide than that. As a blanket statement, I don't know how much water you need every day. I don't know what your diet looks like. I don't know how much you currently drink. I don't know how much you sweat. I don't know what your general baseline is, but you can keep an eye on the colour of your wee and decide if you are hydrated or not. And if you only pee once a day, there's a good chance you are probably dehydrated. I'm going to put that out there. And if it's not a very light colour, I don't know. Is there a chart? I don't know. There's like the Bristol poo chart, but I don't know if there is one for wee. There probably is, and I probably should have looked at it before, but I didn't. So here we are. Keep your pee at a good colour. We all know what a good colour of wee is, so do that. Mediterranean diet generally is a pretty good diet. You just need to be mindful of how calorie dense some of the heart healthy fats are. So olive oil, avocado, really good for you, but calorie dense. So you just have to be mindful of your portion size with it. Have them in moderation. Oily fish like salmon and mackerel, much more calorie dense than, say, whitefish like cod, but also full of heart healthy fats and have totally different, have different nutrient profile. So the Mediterranean diet is a good base, but you still need to apply your own individual needs to it when it comes to like calories and overall intake. Exercise, move regularly throughout the day. If you have a desk job, at least once an hour, get up, even if it is for like a couple of minutes and just a quick stretch at your desk. Even if you can't physically, get up and go, just stretch out your upper back whilst you sat down. Do something every hour. So make sure you're moving regularly throughout the day. And the minimum guidelines by the ACSM, which is the American College, I'm going to say, of Sports Medicine, 150 to 300 minutes of intentional activity per week. Exercise, activity, intentional activity, I'm going to say it's slightly different. Intentional activity, and that doesn't mean the steps you accrued whilst doing your washing. It means actual taking time to do a type of exercise, whether that is a strength session, whether that is a bodyweight or band session, whether it is a walk. That is your minimum guidelines per week of intentional activity. And I could break that down so much more in terms of intensity and specifically what you should be doing. But honestly, you just probably need to move more than you currently do. Start there. If you're not meeting that guideline, don't sweat about how exactly you spend each of those 300 minutes. Just spend them. Go and do them. Start moving more, and it will have a massive impact. Strength training regularly, at least 2 to 3 times a week. Again, this depends where you're at now, and we can get more specific on how long you do it for and what intensity you train at and all of those things. But strength training needs to be in your week in your life at least 2 to 3 times per week. Flexibility and mobility work, again, at least once a week if you're doing nothing now. Now that could be flexibility and mobility work, could be like yoga, Pilates. It could be just doing at the end of your strength session that you do some joint mobility, joint focused work. So things like isolating muscles around the hip and things like that. So include them regularly in your strength sessions and or do them isolated. Stress management, yoga, deep breathing, meditation, journaling, mindfulness practices to help regulate your body's stress response and systems. So even just things like deep breathing. So it could be that each evening you could just do 3 breaths, right? This is how simple it can be. Again, this is why I'm not an influencer, because there's no point me telling you this whole big in-depth thing that you must do. As simple as 3 breaths when you're in bed. But on each of them, you breathe in for 3 and out for 4 or 5. That is how simple it can be to start including some stress management into your day. That simple. I'm not saying that's all everybody needs, but if you currently do nothing, that's how simple it is to start. You're already in bed and you're already breathing. Just, what's the word? Give it a glow up. There we go. I'll be influencery. Give it a glow up and count your breaths for 3 of them. 5, even better. Do 5 breaths that way. But that's as simple as it can be to get started on your stress management. And make sure that you have time for yourself, whatever that looks like. It can be as simple as 10 minutes in the garden with a brew. It can be going for a walk on your own. It can be reading a book with a coffee with no music on or your favourite music on. It could be playing rave music and having a dance around your kitchen. But at some point, ideally every day, don't get me wrong, 5-10 minutes, do something that is just for you. And again, the stress management impact of that is huge, and beyond stress management, the mental health impact or the physical health impact if you're doing some form of physical activity to get your time for yourself. It doesn't have to be complicated, but you do need to do it. From a sleep perspective, aim for a consistent sleep schedule. Try your best with this. Sleep is always a topic where I can just hear the mums like screaming at me like, yeah, you want to try this? But do your best. That's why I say aim for it. Do your best. Think about it. I'm not saying you have to get it perfect, but put some thought into how could you improve your current sleep schedule, or how could you make your bedroom a bit more restful or a better sleep environment. And a simple thing I ask clients to do, particularly on the bricks method, we look at a morning routine and a sleep routine. Again, nothing groundbreaking, not exciting enough to go viral on Instagram. A simple sleep routine could be that half an hour before you go to bed, you do the same 3 things. That's all it takes for your body to start to create a habit. Your brain will go, oh, whenever she does these things, we go to bed half an hour later. Let's start slowing down, guys. Come on. All systems that need to do something ready for bed, let's start doing them. And that sounds so simple, but it is. Mine is literally that I will make sure I'm in my pajamas, which, as if I'm not in my pajamas half an hour before I go to bed. Make sure I'm in my pajamas. I go and put the lamp on in the bedroom and I take the water upstairs. That's it. Literally all I do. But that is done around half an hour before I go to bed every night. The latter. The lamp and the water are always in my pajamas way before that. And then a morning routine. Again, you don't have to have both. I don't specifically have a morning routine because I start work at 7 a.m. and my morning routine is get up as late as possible to look as professional as possible in that time. So, well, professional, presentable, I'm not sure. So I would rather prioritize an extra 10 minutes of sleep than 10 minutes of something else, because I know that I have time later in my day to do the other things. But it might be that if you start work at 9 and you get up at 7, you might want to get up at 10 to 7 to fit 10 minutes of something for you into your day. It's so individual. And again, it doesn't have to be a big elaborate routine. You don't need to film yourself getting out of bed. Contrary to popular belief, you don't have to do that. Also, contrary to popular influencer belief, nobody thinks you woke up like that, hun, because somebody set your camera up. Anyway, a simple morning routine could be that you get up, you put the kettle on, and while the kettle boils, you do 5 minutes of a circuit of squats, lunges, push-ups, and crunches, just on repeat until your kettle is boiled or until your 5-minute timer goes off. Something that simple, because it's just 5 minutes for you. And starting the day doing something for yourself is really, really a massive positive impact. So yeah, I think sleep, stress, exercise, diet, yeah. Also going to add in that if you do have genuine concerns around your cortisol levels and you think maybe you have a cortisol imbalance, speak with your doctor. There is Cushing's syndrome, which is hypercortisolism, basically high levels of circulating cortisol. And then Addison's disease, which is at the other end, which is characterized by low cortisol levels and is a pretty serious autoimmune disease, which causes damage to the adrenal glands. So there are times when we do need to take cortisol specifically seriously and not just look at stress. But yeah, so if you are concerned, then do make sure that you speak to a doctor. So, in summary, you cannot fix it with a supplement. Fix is with big bunny ears. You can't fix it with a supplement. You need to work on your lifestyle habits, and you probably already know it. I have been someone, I was trying to think of the best example, and this is probably the best one. I have been someone who will drink a bottle of wine, but then not eat, I don't know, like something that's, what could I pick out? Candy floss, for example, because it's just like, it's literally just spun sugar. Why would I eat that? But bottle of wine, absolutely fine. So I do get that there are certain things in your life that you will probably be in a bit of denial about needing an improvement on. But if you are going to spend money on a supplement or put all your hopes onto a supplement, you need to have already looked and addressed your basics. If you're not sleeping, you're not exercising, you know you don't drink and eat well, then you need to work on them. Like, full stop, that is just how it is. And most people selling supplements don't actually understand them and are often misrepresenting data. So I guarantee if you commented on a post about somebody selling electrolytes to fix high cortisol and asked them to explain it to you, either they couldn't, or they would be using like ChatGPT to explain it, or they'd have they'd be part of an MLM that has a script that they can use or something, because most of them don't know it. They don't understand it. They just know they get paid for it. You do need to be managing your long-term stress all the time. Just bear it in mind. And you can have periods where you are under stress. Absolutely, you can. I do it with work. I call it work sprints, where maybe I'm launching a program or I've taken on a few new clients at once, and I've just got lots on and I'm excited and I get stuck into it. That's fine, because I'm going to come back out of that and back into my normal levels of working. So short periods, absolutely fine. Do the boring basics well, and they stop being boring. Those boring basics I just talked about, they are part of life. So you need to find a way to enjoy them being part of your life. Now, that could be testing things out, learning what you do and don't like. So, for example, trying out different styles of cooking, trying a spin class versus a body pump class versus a one-on-one PT session, try running, try things out, learn what you do and don't like, learn what does and doesn't fit into your lifestyle, and try not to start something that you can't see yourself continuing. And by that, I don't mean something new like spin class or whatever. Like, yes, go and try them. But if you are starting a diet such as Atkins or keto or carnivore, and you're going into it thinking, I'm not going to love this, but it's only 6 weeks, I can do it, don't bother. Because if you can't see yourself doing it past 6 weeks, A, you're going to be miserable as sin, and like, life is well too short for that. And B, if you're not going to do it long term, where are you going to be in 6 weeks? What are you going to do? How are you going to maintain any results that you got if you have no intention of carrying on the process that got you the results? And I think that is something that people don't think about. And that is the same with stress management, with fat loss, with a career, like anything. If you can't see yourself doing it long term, why waste time doing it now? Because you won't be able to maintain any positive results that come from it. Another option is speed up the process and work with a coach who can direct your focus and your efforts in the right places. Again, do your research here. Not all coaches are built the same. Just going to say, I am not your average coach. I am a very good coach. If you would like some help, there will be links in the show notes, and there are some on your screen if you're watching me on YouTube. But this isn't a plug for coaching, that's just there. This is genuinely just, I want to help you to break through these things, because I speak with a lot of women who are really stressed out about their cortisol levels, which is obviously, what's the word? It's gone. Anyway, stressing about your stress levels is not helpful. That's where I'm trying to go. I'm sure that word will come to me in about an hour when I'm no longer recording. Anyway, as I say, I really do just hope that this was really helpful for you and breaks it all down into ways that make sense. As I say, if you do need help and would like to reach out to me either with questions or to apply for coaching, details on the screen if you're on YouTube and will be in the notes no matter where you are watching. And you can also follow me on socials, where I am the opposite of a Gymshark wearing gym bunny with makeup on and who looks great all the time. I just rock up with no filters, no controversial claims, looking a little bit like I do now, again, if you can see me on screen. Yeah, I don't take things like this too seriously. I'm here to help. No controversial claims, no filters, just me, loads of actual helpful advice and breaking down all the BS that you see online. So yeah, I hope it was helpful and thank you for your time in listening.